Hi, everyone, and happy Sunday afternoon here in Kazan. It's actually a really nice day. We're finally starting to get like actual weather rather than just snow and ice. I got my little Turkish coffee here, and I was thinking about doing one of these videos again because it's been a little bit. The last one was the Pi Day one, and I was a little bit more scripted there, and today I'm a little bit less scripted. So I'm more coming into this with kind of an idea of what to talk about and to tell you a story about debugging. Uh, and I think this is something where people don't know about me is my background is not initially inside of artificial intelligence, but that was where I kind of moved into inside of my master's studies. Inside of my bachelor's, I actually have a designation in software engineering. So I was working on a software engineering designation. In fact, I was working on a mathematics minor. So Brock had a bit of a weird system in that there was two different designations that you could get, and you can kind of see a designation as being a minor within the major. So a designation could be either software engineering, or I think they called it intelligent systems, which was AI. And you didn't really, for example, like have a set pathway of courses that you had to take. It was just more of certain electives had to be selected, and certain of classes, certain groups of classes would have to be selected to get a designation. And I wanted to get a math minor. I thought that would be valuable because I was interested in cryptography and more of kind of on the security side of things was what I wanted to go into. I wanted to work on security problems. And so I ended up going in and taking cryptography courses and linear programming and a few other different courses along that kind of more combinatorial mathematics route. And then in my final semester, I was told by Gord Dunkley, who sadly passed away, but very good program coordinator and manager for the department there. Very much missed by a lot of students who were always in his office making sure they were taking the right courses. And I was told that I couldn't get a math minor on my current course load because a rule had been established that you had to basically have different courses in your minor than in your major. So even though I had more mathematics credits than any other mathematics minor could possibly have, I was a half credit away from a math minor because I couldn't do that with, using, for example, calculus would have to go against my major and not my minor. So I was a half credit away, and I was a half credit away from the intelligent systems, but I wasn't. I was over by I think a half credit on the software engineering track. So that's why my designation is in software engineering. And a lot of that mostly had to do with I liked computer languages, all sorts of different strange esoteric computer languages. So I had a comparative programming languages. I had a whole course in procedural languages. I had a whole course in discrete event simulation using this language called SimScript, which I don't think anyone ever used ever, except for in that course. But like I had a whole bunch of different programming languages. So I went in through that. Luckily I didn't take compilers because my brain would have probably broke with the workload in that course plus everything else I was doing from what I heard. So through this, as a software engineering perspective, we're always talking about the issues of, is a program correct? How do you debug it? How do you ensure correctness within the system? And this sort of technology or technique, I'd say more of kind of process of elimination and finding what the root cause of the problem is and dissecting it down is something that is incredibly valuable even outside of I'm tracing a bug. So bug tracing that we see there, it is needed in a whole lot more than just on computers. And when I worked inside of the automotive industry, that was pretty much one of the things I was doing all the time, is basically hunting down bugs within the system. It was just that instead of this computer code system and I'm tracing and I'm doing debugging, I was doing it on giant, manufacturing machines and working with engineers to tell me, okay, here's what the data is that we're getting out, and okay, what if we tried this, and how does the machine work? And so it was a lot of black box and white box testing. But the thing that it helped me out most with this week is that my washer went on the fritz and wouldn't drain. So I was debugging a washing machine this week over pretty much an entire evening. I spent 3 hours in front of a washer with towels trying to mop up the water that was coming out of it, having to work with the drainage valve. So with that, it has, the tumbler inside of there. You've got, the detergent input. You've got the water input. Well, you've got a water output at the bottom. It's a pump at the bottom of the dishwasher, or at the clothes washer in the front end. There is a small filter before the pump there. And so if the water isn't draining, okay, I can start to debug that. And I was getting on this machine, a certain error code. So it actually was coming up with a code on the thing, and so I had to look up the manual, figure that out. And so you've got the tumbler, you've got the washer coming out into basically what amounts to kind of like a little filter that blocks off, and you've got a little fin at the bottom, and that pushes out the water. So where can my problem be? Well, if I'm getting a code that I was getting, it's telling me that my pump's not working. So great. So either the pump motor's not working, something is clogging the fins, something's in the trap that's clogging it. So I got to go and diagnose that issue. And so I pull off the front. There's a panel there. Get out my little IKEA Fix-It kit. I'll tell you, spend your money on an IKEA Fix-It kit. Just the one with the little hammer and the screwdriver and all that. If you don't got one of those, saves you so many things. Saves you so many little problems. It's a great little kit if you're just in like, a little apartment, a bachelor's apartment, or in a dorm, that if you just want to fix 2 or 3 little things, great kit to have. And I don't think it's that expensive at all, and the amount of times that I've had to repair something with it, it's easily paid for itself. So I got one of those little IKEA Fix-It kits. Use a screwdriver, take that front panel off, and I've got this kind of twisty on, thing inside of it, and I untwist it, and I see something that looks like a pipe, and of course water's just pouring out on my floor on this point, so I have to get out, all my nice clean towels are no longer nice and clean, put them on the floor, and I'm just dredging it out into the bathtub. I'm doing that for about a half hour because of all the water that spills out of it, and I'm looking at this thing, and it looks like there's a pipe coming out of it. Well, that doesn't make any sense, that there's that. So I'm kind of fighting with it for a while, and I'm, filling and then expelling and trying to get it to work, and it works a little bit. So finally, I think, okay, I'm done. I'm going to quit. I'm going to go get, a tech or something. And I lay down in bed, and I'm on my phone kind of looking at the schematics and that, and watching a video on this, and I see it's actually, it was a Russian video. So I know it's the exact same model because there's some model differences inside of Russia versus in other places that use this manufacturer. And so I'm kind of watching this video of it, and he pulls it out, and it's the exact same model I got, but when he pulls out the thing, out comes the trap. There's no pipe coming out of it. So I'm like, that's weird. So I think about it for a second, and then it dawns on me. There's 2 different colors of plastic on the thing that he pulls out. The first is the top cover, which is black plastic, and the interior one is white plastic inside of that. Well, the way that you get a color discrepancy in plastics is that they're 2 separate molded parts. You can't really mold a mixed part, or at least it's not like, great, we're going to make this part. You could do it with like, the one color and the other color in the mold, but that's incredibly expensive to do, and this is like a cheap washer, so nobody's going to do that. There's no aesthetic reason to do that. It's more just kind of what plastics do you have and what color do they naturally kind of come as, right? So the interior plastics are different than the exterior plastic, so they just use whatever color works for the cheapest that they can get it. So I take a look at it, and I'm like, that interior part is the same color as that pipe coming out of my thing. So I go and take off the piece again, and of course flood my floor again, because every time you do this, any water that's in the compartment floods out. and it's not been draining, so all the water in the machine. So I'm pulling it out, and I noticed that the cap's very hard to twist off. Okay, and that's already kind of like stage one. Why is this hard to twist off? So I twist it off, and here is this pipe-looking thing, kind of on a downward angle. And I think about it for a second. I'm like, that's not a pipe. That's the interior plate that goes into that plastic thing. So what had happened was these things were only held together via, the mechanical force of the two pieces being kind of clicked in place. Well, when I took that piece off here, this stayed. And what had happened is it had been wedged on an angle. And since it was wedged on an angle, the force of the resistance on those two things, the friction from that was higher than the force of the twist. And so either one of two things happens. One, it has to break apart at the point of contact. It has to break that mechanical hold. Or the piece has to break in some way, like shatter. Luckily, it didn't shatter. So I'm looking at that. I now have this other piece inside of there. I know that it seems to be wedged. It's on an angle. The pipe-ish looking bit that kind of moves up the middle is on an angle. So I get out my pliers out of the IKEA kit, and I'm very carefully pulling on it to make sure that I'm not breaking it any more than I got to break it. And so give it a bit of a pull. Plop, out it comes. So nothing inside of the trap. Okay. So now I've eliminated the trap as my problem. There's no issue with the trap other than these two pieces have, for some reason, separated from one another. I'm assuming somebody angled it in, pushed it in with too much force, put it into that sort of state. But I'm at least looking in. So now I get out my little flashlight. I'm looking down in there, and inside is the little fans. So there's two things left. Either the fans could be bad, or it's the motor. And if it's the motor, I'm done. That's about the extent that I can diagnose that the motor is blown. Well, if you have a motor and it's going through torque in terms of that, and there is resistance, then one of two things happens. Either A, the torque is enough to cause the motor to have enough resistance that it's just going to stop the motor, or B, the motor blows. So one of these two things is probably what has happened. And I look at the fins, and on them is an elastic hairband. Like I could show you one, but I don't have them because, as you can see, not much things to tie back. So I'm assuming it's been in there for quite a while given the state of decomposition on the rubber on it and inside of it, and it's wrapped around my fins. So it's probably been in there for quite a while, because even when we got the place, my wife was complaining that, the washer was not draining as fast as she's used to. But we just thought it was the model. So it's probably been in there since we've got the place here a couple of years back. So it's been wrapped around in there. So I get out my pliers again. I get out my other set. I got a pair of needle noses. That's one thing that the IKEA set doesn't have that's also very useful is needle noses. Get some needle noses. So I get in there with the needle noses and I'm working it off and untwisting it and unraveling it around the motor. And so I get that out. And then I do something that you probably shouldn't do, and that is I turn on the drain setting to visually inspect it, and it spins again. Huzzah. So that means my motor's not blown. So now I've debugged the motor's not blown, the fins seem to have been in a resistant state, and the front trap seems to be on a bad angle. So I think, okay, so if we look at it, the motor is now known to be working. The fins seem to be had been caught up, pulled that out, and the trap was on a poor angle. So put the trap back together, put the two pieces, they click back together, yay. I didn't break anything, huzzah. And the motor, I know it's running, the fins seem to be moving around. I won't know until I put water back into the system and put on the trap. So then testing, fill the dryer, get out the towels, turn down to the drain setting, out goes the water. So right there, I could have, called up a guy, had him in here diagnosing the problem, get a big giant bill, or I can use my own brain and skill set to try to fix it myself before there. And even there, if I hadn't have been able to get to that point and say that the motor was blown, I can at least, when they come in, say the motor's blown, fix it, rather than having them in here for hours trying to diagnose it like I had to do. So, with that said, I think that is another good reason that we need to know how to debug things. That debugging is not just for computer code, but can also help you with repairing various household appliances. We go through the same sort of process. So, have a good Sunday, everyone, and I will see you all next week at Anopolis.